The world is de-dollarizing, and even the United States' closest allies around the world are making moves to reduce their exposure to the US dollar. In the latest news, Israel has announced that they will be reducing their exposure to the US dollar, adding other currencies into their foreign currency holdings, most notably the Chinese yuan, to their foreign currency holdings. Is this going to move the needle by itself? Absolutely not. But it is a signpost pointing towards the world that we are headed towards. Ready? Let's dive in. All right, so Israel recently announced that they are adding the yuan to their foreign currency reserves. In addition to that, they are adding the Canadian dollar, the Australian dollar, the yen, in addition to the yuan. And if we take a look at this chart, we can see here in 2020 and 2021 where they were. Majority was US dollars at about 67%. There was a big chunk of the euro at about 30% and a tiny chunk of the British pound at 2.5%. That was largely unchanged in 2021, and there has been a massive shift going into the target for 2022. You can see here they have added a big amount to the British pound here, doubling it, going from 2.5% to 5%. We can see here that this darker gray one is the Japanese yen at 5%. We are also seeing the Canadian dollar added. We are seeing the Australian dollar added, and the Chinese renminbi, the Chinese yuan added as well. Now, the major hit here is going to come to the US dollar, going from 67% down to 61%, and then also a major hit to the exposure to the euro, going from 31% down to 20% here. So it really looks like they are trying to diversify here. Obviously, the massive chunk here is still US dollars, but we're seeing a shift in the mentality, a shift around the globe. This is just a signpost of what everybody is doing right now, watching how things are unfolding between Russia and Ukraine, looking around and seeing, hey, Saudi Arabia and China are in talks to price oil in the yuan. We're seeing different relationships start, different alliances fail, different currency reserves held in other countries get locked off. Regardless of what these countries think about what's going on right now, whether they think it's good or it's bad, nobody wants to have the potential for it to happen to them. So even countries like Israel, they're starting to reduce their exposure to one or just a couple single currencies, going to try and spread that risk out across the board so that if they need to, they can continue to do trade with the countries that they need to do trade with. If we take a look at this chart, we can see that over the last couple of years, the shekel dollar exchange rate has moved lower as they've been accumulating foreign currency reserves, now to the point where it's worth just about 1/3 of their GDP. They've been loading up on foreign currencies. Now, even if the dollar sticks around for a long time, which I believe it probably will, when you look at the rise and fall of great powers, of empires that have global reserve currencies over the last few hundred years, one thing you tend to see is that the world keeps on using that currency as the global reserve currency for quite some time, far after that country is done being the global superpower, the reigning power. Now, keep in mind, most of the time it's still going to be gold or silver coins when you're looking back at world history, so this time might be different. However, given the cycles of history, we might expect the dollar to stick around a little bit longer than a lot of us might expect. Now, one thing to keep in mind about this is that even if the dollar sticks around for quite a while, its share in global trade might have to decline simply because the United States' share in global trade is far lower than the amount of trade that is denominated in US dollars. So if US dollar exposure around the world and the usage of the US dollar comes in line with US GDP and participation in global trade, we will see a drastic reduction around the world in dollars just from that alone. And many people think that that is in the cards, regardless of what happens with inflation, deflation, devaluation, debasing currencies around the world. And to highlight this, we're talking about Israel and how they've just added exposure to the yuan in their foreign currency reserves. One of the reasons is because of the trade that they do with China. If we look here, we can see that overall volumes with China has doubled between 2016 and 2021. So the United States is still Israel's biggest trade partner, but the amount of trade that they do with China has doubled over the last 5 years. So is the yuan going to replace the dollar globally? Probably not. If we take a look at this chart, we can see that the yuan was included in the SDR basket back in 2015 here. Really hasn't changed much in terms of the share of global payments. It is still under 3%. However, we are likely headed towards a period of less centralization, less dominance by one central currency, more of a fractured global financial system with multiple currencies being used, multiple reserve currencies. In fact, Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell recently, within the last couple of months, talking to Congress, said there would be nothing wrong with it. And he said, I would not be surprised at all if we saw multiple global reserve currencies. And so people are talking about this. The policymakers, the people pulling the strings from behind the scenes, they are talking about this. I would not be surprised at all to see multiple global reserve currencies, more of a fractured global financial system, more decentralization, less centralization, more redundancy, less just in time across the entire world. It is more likely than not at this point, given where things have been and where it looks like things are headed. And finally, in just a couple of weeks, I'm going to be speaking at the Market Disruptors Live Conference in Dallas from May 6th through May 8th is the conference. I would love to see you there. I've got a link to sign up in the description below. As always, I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.